The sky above planet Dural turned dark as thick clouds gathered. Rain began to fall over the Rocky Mountains, and thunder echoed in the distance. A small silver ship flew fast between the clouds. Inside the ship sat a young alien girl named Riva. Her skin was light blue, and her eyes were green like the forest. She was part of the Zari people, a peaceful race who lived far from war and destruction. Riva was on a mission to collect rare stones for her village's energy source. Suddenly, her screen flashed red. A warning sound rang in her ears. The engine had failed. The ship began to spin. She held on tightly, but she could not stop the fall. Her ship crashed into the forest below with a loud boom. Trees broke. Smoke rose into the sky. Then all went quiet. Riva slowly opened her eyes. Her head hurt, and her ship was in pieces. The radio was broken. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand. She stepped outside. The air smelled strange. The forest was dark and full of strange sounds. This was not a friendly place. She looked up at the sky. The stars were hidden behind clouds. She didn't know where she was. Her map was gone. She was alone on a strange planet. Riva began walking. Her boots made soft sounds on the wet ground. She needed shelter and food. She also had to fix her small scanner if she wanted to send a message. As she moved deeper into the forest, she heard a sound behind her. She turned quickly, but saw nothing. The sound came again. Footsteps. Her heart beat faster. She reached for her small laser stick. A shape moved behind the trees. Then a figure stepped into view. It was tall, with dark clothes and a helmet. The creature held a long stick with metal at the end. Riva froze. She had seen images of such beings before. The humans. Riva's people told stories of humans. They were strong but dangerous. Many believed humans were wild. Some said they drank the blood of other beings. Others said they destroyed planets with fire. Her eyes widened. This must be one of them. The human stopped and looked at her. He didn't. Move closer. His name was Tom. He had been watching the sky when he saw the crash. He came to help. But now he saw the small alien girl standing in front of him, afraid. Tom slowly raised one hand to show he meant no harm. But Riva stepped back. She raised her stick. Tom could see her hands were shaking. He spoke in a soft voice. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." Riva did not understand his words. His voice sounded rough. She stepped back again and tripped on a stone. She fell to the ground with a cry. Her leg was hurt. Tom walked toward her slowly. He took off his helmet so she could see his face. His eyes were calm. He knelt beside her and reached into his bag. He pulled out a small cloth and a bottle of water. He poured water on the cloth and gently touched her leg. Riva tried to move away, but the pain stopped her. She watched him closely. Tom wrapped the cloth around her wound. He said something again, pointing at her leg and then at himself. Riva still didn't understand his words, but she could see something else. He was not angry. He was not trying to hurt her. He was helping her. For the first time, Riva felt confused. Why would a human help her? She had heard they were cruel. She had been told they were monsters. But this human was careful. He was kind. Tom helped her stand. She leaned on him as he guided her to a cave nearby. It was dry inside. He made a small fire and gave her something to eat. Riva didn't eat at first, but then she smelled the food. It was warm and soft. She took a bite. It was good. They sat in silence. The fire made soft cracking sounds. Outside, the rain kept falling. Riva looked at Tom. He was checking a small machine. It looked like a scanner. She pulled her broken one from her bag and showed it to him. Tom took it and turned it over in his hands. He smiled a little and nodded. Then he opened his bag and took out some tools. He began working on it. Riva watched him. His hands moved quickly and carefully. Hours passed. Riva's eyes grew heavy. She leaned back against the wall of the cave. Her body was tired. Before sleep took her, she looked at the human one more time. She had feared him when she first saw him. She thought he would hurt her. But now, she was safe. Her leg was wrapped. Her scanner was being fixed, and the fire kept her warm. And the one who gave her all this was the same creature her people called bloodthirsty. Riva closed her eyes with one thought in her mind. Maybe the stories were wrong. Maybe humans were not what they seemed. Morning light entered the cave slowly. Riva opened her eyes and saw the fire was almost out. She looked around and saw Tom sitting near the entrance. He was watching the forest, quiet and still. His helmet was beside him, and his bag was open. Some wires and tools were spread on a small cloth. Riva's legs still hurt, but the pain was less now. She sat up and touched the bandage. It was tight and clean. She looked at Tom again. He had not moved. She picked up her scanner and saw it was half open. Some parts were new. He had been working on it all night. She stood slowly and walked to him. Tom turned his head and smiled. He said something in his soft voice. Riva still didn't know his words, but she understood his tone. He was trying to be kind. He pointed to the scanner, then made a small sign with his hand. It looked like he was telling her it would work soon. Riva nodded. She pointed at herself and said, "Riva." Tom looked at her for a second, then smiled again. He pointed at his chest and said, "Tom." They both nodded. It was the first time they shared their names. It felt small but important. Suddenly, a sound came from outside. A loud animal call, like a roar. Tom stood up quickly. He picked up his metal stick and looked into the trees. Riva stepped beside him. Her eyes scanned the forest, searching for danger. From behind the trees came three strange animals. Their bodies were low, with sharp legs and long teeth. Their eyes were yellow and full of hunger. One growled, showing its sharp mouth. Riva had seen such creatures in her books. They were hunters, very fast and deadly. Tom held out his hand to push Riva back. He stood between her and the beasts. One of the animals charged. Tom stepped to the side and hit it with the metal stick. The creature cried out and fell back. The other two circled them. Riva picked up a stone and threw it. It hit one of the animals in the side. It turned toward her. Tom moved fast and blocked its path. He hit it hard, and it rolled on the ground. The third beast ran away into the trees. The other two followed after a short growl. Silence returned. Tom breathed hard. Riva looked at him, surprised. He had risked his life for her again. He had nothing to gain. Still, he stood in front of danger to protect her. They went back inside. Tom cleaned his arms. One of the beasts had scratched him. Blood showed on his sleeve. Riva opened her bag and took out a small green bottle. She poured a drop on the cut, and the liquid began to glow. Tom winced, but stayed still. The glow faded, and the cut started to heal. Tom looked at her with new eyes. She was not just a scared alien girl anymore. She was strong and brave in her own way. He nodded at her in thanks. The rest of the day was quiet. Tom worked on the scanner. Riva helped him when she could. She handed him tools and watched carefully. She was learning fast. At sunset, the scanner made a soft sound. Let's blink. It was working. Riva smiled and looked at Tom with wide eyes. He had done it. She pressed a button and sent a short signal toward the sky. It was a beacon, a simple message. Alive. Need help. After that, she and Tom sat near the fire again. Riva took a small light ball from her bag and pressed it. A soft blue image floated above them. It showed her home planet, the green trees, blue rivers, and bright sky. Tom watched with interest. Then he pointed to the sky and made a question with his hand. Riva nodded. She pointed at herself, then at the image. She came from that place. Tom reached into his own bag and took out a small picture. It showed a house with a wooden wall and a tall tree beside it. A woman and two children were smiling. Riva looked at the picture, then at Tom. She pointed at the woman and made a question. Tom nodded. He pointed to the children and made a small motion with his hand, showing their height. They were small. Maybe his family. The air between them felt warm. They were not from the same world, but now they shared something important. They had saved each other, helped each other, learned from each other. Night came again. Riva looked up at the sky. One small star blinked fast. It was a sign. Someone had received her signal. Help would come. But a strange feeling grew inside her. She was happy to be found, but a part of her was not ready to leave. Tom saw the blinking star too. He knew what it meant. He smiled at her, but there was something in his eyes, a little sadness. He had grown used to her being there. She was quiet, but strong. She asked questions with her eyes, and her silence spoke more than words. They didn't speak much that night, but they sat close to the fire, side by side. The forest was quiet, and the stars above shined gently. The stories Riva had heard were wrong. Humans were not monsters, at least not this one. Tom had a heart, a big one, and it beat not for war, but for kindness. The wind moved gently through the trees as morning light returned. The sky was clear, and the sound of birds filled the forest. Riva sat near the cave entrance, holding her scanner. The light on it blinked slowly. That meant the signal was working. Some were far away. Someone had seen her call for help. But there was no message yet, only silence. Tom was boiling water using a small metal pot. He dropped dry leaves inside. Steam rose, and the smell filled the cave. Riva watched him. The human had done many things she never expected. He could fight. He could heal. He could even make tea. She walked over and sat near him. Tom handed her a cup and smiled. Riva sipped the drink. It was bitter at first, but became warm inside her chest. She gave a small nod. Tom understood it as a thank you. After they drank, Riva opened the map on her scanner. A red dot blinked near a tall hill. She touched the screen and made a line from the cave to the dot. That was the nearest high point. If they went there, the signal would be stronger. Maybe her people could hear her better from that place. Riva pointed to the map and then to the forest outside. Tom looked at the screen and then at her. He understood. She wanted to go there. He didn't speak, but he nodded. He began packing their things. They started walking by noon. Riva leaned on a stick while Tom carried most of the supplies. The forest path was rough. Vines covered the ground. Insects flew near their faces. Strange animals watched them from a distance but didn't come close. Riva kept checking the scanner. The red dot grew brighter. That meant they were getting close. They crossed a small river by stepping over fallen logs. Riva almost slipped, but Tom caught her arm just in time. She looked at him and smiled a little. They reached a clearing after hours of walking. In the middle of it stood the tall hill. Rocks covered the sides, and sharp plants grew between them. Riva sighed. It was not an easy climb. Tom looked at the hill and then at her leg. She still limped a little. Without saying a word, Tom bent down and showed his back. Riva was surprised. He wanted her to climb on. She hesitated at first, but then she nodded and carefully got on his back. Tom held her legs and began climbing. The path was steep, and stones moved under his feet, but Tom kept going. His breath grew heavy, but he didn't stop. Riva watched his back. She could hear his heart beating. It was strong and steady. They reached the top when the sun was low. A wide view opened in front of them. The forest stretched in every direction. In the far sky, a soft light blinked. It was not a star. It was a ship. Riva quickly pressed buttons on her scanner. The light blinked fast. She sent a message again. Still alive. Safe. Need pickup. She watched the signal grow stronger. Tom sat on a rock, breathing hard. His shirt was wet with sweat. Riva walked over and gave him her water bottle. He drank slowly and nodded. Suddenly, the scanner made a new sound. A voice. It was weak and broken, but Riva could hear it. Riva, this is base. Signal received. Sending help. Stay in location. Arrival in 24 units. Riva's eyes filled with light. Her people were coming. She would go home soon. She looked at Tom. He was staring at the sky, quiet. Riva walked to him and sat down. She pointed to the stars and then made a small circle with her hand. She was telling him about her world, a peaceful world, far from here. Tom pointed to the trees, then to the picture in his pocket. He had a world too, a place with people waiting for him. They were both travelers, both from faraway places. That night, they stayed on the hilltop. The fire was small, but it kept them warm. Riva took out a tiny music ball from her bag. She pressed it, and soft sounds filled the air. The music was slow and calm, like waves on water. Tom closed his eyes and listened. For the first time, they were not afraid of each other. They were not strangers anymore. They had walked the same path, faced the same danger, and shared the same food. They had become something more. Friends. Riva looked at the stars. She remembered the stories. Stories that painted humans as cruel. But Tom had saved her life, fed her, protected her, and fixed her scanner. He had carried her up a hill, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. She knew now the truth was different. People could not be known by stories alone. They had to be known by action. Tom turned to her and spoke gently. She still didn't know all his words, but she understood. His voice. He said something about mourning, something about goodbye. She nodded slowly. She knew it too. When the sun rose, their time together would end. But for now, they were here, on top of a quiet hill, under the wide sky. Two lives that had crossed for a reason neither could explain. A human and an alien girl, once afraid, now safe in each other's company. And above them, the stars watched in silence. Morning came with a soft wind blowing across the hill. Riva sat near the edge, looking at the sky. The scanner showed a blinking light. Her people were coming. The ship was still far, but moving closer. Her heart felt light, yet something deep inside was heavy. She knew what it meant. This adventure was about to end. Tom stood not far from her. He was holding his metal stick and looking at the trees below. His face was calm, but his eyes stayed sharp. He had been quiet since the message came last night. Riva watched him. She wanted to say something, but the words felt stuck. How do you thank someone who saved your life more than once? Suddenly, the scanner made a loud sound. Not the soft signal of her people, but something else. Riva picked it up and looked closely. Another ship was near. It was not from her planet. Its code was unknown. She showed the screen to Tom. He frowned and looked up. The sky turned darker on one side. A small black dot appeared, growing larger every second. It was a ship, but not the peaceful kind. Its wings were sharp, and its engines made a deep noise. Riva's eyes widened. She knew this design. It belonged to the Zarn, a race known for stealing and trapping small travelers. Tom pulled Riva behind a rock. The strange ship flew over the hill and turned back in a circle. Then it landed at the bottom of the hill. The sound shook the ground. A hatch opened, and three figures stepped out. They were tall and wore silver armor. They held long weapons in their hands. Riva's breath grew short. She knew they were not here to help. They must have caught her signal too. But instead of rescue, they came for capture. The Zarn could sell alien technology. A broken scanner was still worth a lot. And if they caught her, they would not let her go. Tom's jaw tightened. He looked at Riva and pointed to the forest behind the hill. She understood. He wanted her to run. She shook her head. Her scanner was the only way her people could find her. If she left now, the rescue ship would not know where to land. Tom thought for a moment. Then he stood up, pulled a claw from his bag, and gave it to her. It had a small mirror inside. He made a motion, showing her to wait and use the mirror. When she saw a bright light in the sky, it was a signal tool. She could use it to guide the rescue ship. Riva took the cloth and held it tightly. She wanted to stop him, but Tom had already turned. He walked down the hill with his metal stick. His steps were strong. He was going to face the strangers alone. At the bottom, the three Zarn guards saw him. They raised their weapons and pointed at him. Tom raised one hand slowly. He was not holding a weapon now. He wanted to talk. But the Zarn did not trust humans. They stepped forward. Riva watched from above, her heart beating fast. She could not hear the words, but she saw the movement. One of the Zarn shouted and tried to grab Tom. That was a mistake. Tom moved quickly. He grabbed the metal stick from his back and hit the guard's weapon. Sparks flew. The second guard aimed, but Tom rolled to the side and kicked his leg. The third guard fired, and the blast hit a rock near Tom's shoulder. Riva could not stay hidden. She picked up a sharp stone and threw it down. It hit one guard's head. He turned and shouted. Tom used the moment to swing his stick again. One guard fell. The second guard charged. Tom blocked the strike with his arm. The pain was clear on his face, but he didn't fall. He pushed forward and hit the guard's side. The last one ran toward Riva. She grabbed a branch and tried to defend herself, but the guard was too strong. He grabbed her arm and pulled her down. She screamed. But before the guard could take her, Tom appeared. His shirt was torn, and blood marked his sleeve, but he didn't stop. He threw his body into the guard and knocked him away. Riva fell back and rolled to the side. Tom stood over her and faced the last guard. They fought close, hit for hit, step for step. In the end, Tom struck the guard in the chest, and he fell, not moving. Silence returned. Only the wind moved through the grass. Tom turned to Riva. His arm was bleeding, and his face was pale, but he gave her a weak smile. She ran to him and helped him sit. Her hands moved fast, pressing the wound and wrapping cloth around it. She didn't speak. She just worked. Then the sky lit up. A bright silver light came from above. Riva looked up. Her rescue ship had arrived. The sound of its engine was soft and smooth. A small light blinked near the bottom of the ship. It was looking for the signal. Riva took the mirror and held it high. She aimed it at the blinking light and moved it slowly. The ship responded. A soft voice came from the scanner. Signal locked. Landing now. The ship came down beside the hill. The door opened, and Tazari officers stepped out. They wore long blue coats and had kind eyes. One of them ran to Riva and helped her up. The other looked at Tom and raised an eyebrow. This human? He asked. Riva nodded. He saved me. Tom stood slowly. He looked at the officers and then at Riva. She turned to him. You should come, she said softly, placing her hand on her chest. Tom looked at the forest behind him. Then he looked at the ship. After a long pause, he nodded. They walked toward the ship together, step by step. Behind them, the forest stood quiet again. The black ship of the Zarn was silent now, its threat gone, and in the soft morning light, an alien girl and a human walked side by side, no longer strangers. The inside of the rescue ship was calm and quiet. Soft lights glowed along the walls, and the air smelled clean. Riva sat on a cushioned bench, holding her scanner. She watched Tom from across the room. He was sitting with a bandage on his arm. One of the Zari doctors was checking his wound. Tom didn't say much. He only nodded when someone spoke to him. His face stayed serious, but his eyes moved around, looking at everything. Riva knew this place must feel strange to him. The ship, the people, the sounds, all were new. Riva walked over and sat beside him. She gave him a small round fruit from her pack. He looked at it, then at her, and gave a small smile. He took a bite. It was sweet and soft. For a moment, the tension in his face relaxed. The ship moved through space, heading toward planet Zari. Outside the window, stars passed by like lines of light. Tom leaned closer to look. Riva sat quietly. She wanted to speak but didn't know what to say. So much had changed. Only a few days ago, she had feared humans. Now, one sat beside her, trusted and respected. Later, the captain of the ship entered the room. His name was Dallin. He had silver lines on his jacket and a soft voice. Riva, he said, we are glad you're safe. We received your signal. Just in time, Riva stood and bowed slightly. Thank you, Captain. But I would not be alive without him. She pointed to Tom. The captain looked at Tom. We have heard stories of humans, and most are not kind. But you protected one of our own. That speaks louder than any tale. Tom stood and nodded. He didn't understand all the words, but he knew the meaning. Respect was clear in the captain's voice. We are going to our main base now. Dallin continued. Riva, your family will be there. And Tom, you will be treated as a guest of honor. Tom didn't reply, but his eyes showed surprise. No one had called him a guest before on another planet. Hours passed. Riva showed Tom how to use the screen near his seat. It could show maps, pictures, even music. He smiled when she played the soft song from her music ball. He leaned back and closed his eyes, listening to the tune that once filled their cave. When the ship reached planet Zari, the view outside the window changed. Wide green fields, tall crystal towers, and flowing rivers stretched across the land. Tom stared with wonder. It was nothing like the wild forest they had left behind. The ship landed near the main city. A small group of people waited outside. Among them stood a tall Zari with bright green eyes, Riva's parents. She ran to them. Her mother held her close, tears in her eyes. Her father placed a hand on her head. Full of pride and relief, Tom stood behind her, quiet. He didn't want to interrupt, but Riva turned and pulled him forward. "This is Tom," she said to her parents. "He saved me more than once." Her father looked at Tom with careful eyes. Then he nodded slowly. "You have our thanks, human. We owe you more than words." Tom gave a small bow. Riva smiled. Her heart felt warm. They took him to the city. Everything was clean and shining. Buildings reached into the sky, but none looked heavy. Lights floated in the air. People moved gently, with peace in their steps. Tom walked slowly, taking in every detail. He touched a tree with soft blue leaves. He smiled at a small child who waved at him. The child laughed and ran to his parents. The Zari Council invited Tom and Riva to speak about what had happened inside a round hall. Many elders sat in a circle. Riva told the story from the start, her crash, the forest, the cave, the beasts, the attack, and Tom's bravery. The elders listened carefully. One of them, old and wise, looked at Tom. "You are not like the humans in our records," she said. "You show kindness, not cruelty. You protect, not destroy." Tom didn't understand the full speech, but Riva translated for him. He nodded once. "Maybe," the elder said. "It is time to write a new story about humans." Everyone in the hall agreed. Later that evening, Riva and Tom sat in a quiet garden. The stars above shone brightly. The soft sound of water came from a nearby fountain. Riva looked at him. "You can stay, you know. The council says you are welcome." Tom looked up at the stars. He was silent for a moment. Then he pointed at the sky. Riva followed his finger. He was pointing toward the distant place where Earth might be. "You miss your home," she said softly. He nodded. His eyes were calm, but full of thought. "I understand," Riva said. "Just like I wanted to return to mine." They sat in silence for a while. "I will miss you," she added. Tom looked at her. He didn't speak, but his hand reached out and gently touched hers. It was a small gesture, but it said everything. They watched the stars together, two souls from different worlds, brought together by accident, separated by distance, but forever connected by choice. Riva knew that even if Tom returned to Earth, this bond would never break. And she promised herself that one day she would visit his world and return the kindness he had shown her. The sun of planet Zari rose slowly over the green hills. The light touched the tall towers of the city and the shining lakes below. Birds with bright wings flew through the air. Everything looked peaceful, but Riva's heart felt heavy. Today, Tom was going back. The Zari Council had spoken with Earth through a safe communication link. A human ship had agreed to pick Tom up from the outer space zone in 2 days. It was good news. He would return home to his people, his world, and maybe even his family. But it also meant he would leave Riva and her world behind. Riva stood in the garden where she and Tom often sat. A small tree grew beside the bench. It had white flowers that opened only during sunrise. She picked one gently and held it in her hand. Its petals were soft, and the smell was sweet. She turned as she heard footsteps. Tom was walking toward her. He was wearing the simple clothes the Zari people had given him. His arm was almost healed now, and his face looked calm. But his eyes had the same quiet sadness she felt. They sat on the bench together. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of wind and birds filled the air. Riva gave him the flower. Tom took it carefully, looked at it, and placed it inside the small book he carried in his pocket. It was the book where he kept his pictures, his notes, and now, a memory of Zari. Riva pointed to the sky. "Your ship will come from that side," she said. Tom nodded. He had seen the map. He already knew. But something in her voice made it feel more real. "I want to show you something," she said. They walked through the city, past the glowing fountains and soft lights, until they reached a large gate. Behind it was a small museum. Inside were images, machines, and history of Zari people. Riva led him to a special room. On the wall were drawings made by children. Bright colors showed stars, trees, and creatures. In the center was a new drawing. It showed a small silver ship crashing into a forest. Next to it was a human holding a stick, standing beside a blue alien girl. The two were smiling, and the stars above formed a heart. Riva pointed at the drawing. "A young girl made this after hearing our story. She said the human in her dreams was a hero." Tom looked at the drawing for a long time. He didn't speak, but his eyes said more than words. Riva could feel it. He was touched. He didn't see himself as a hero, but now the Zari people did. That evening, the city held a small farewell event. Lights floated in the sky, and soft music played across the square. Many Zari had come to see Tom. Some brought gifts, a soft cloth robe, a box of fruit, a carved crystal star. Tom thanked each one with a nod and smile. Riva stood beside him, her heart beating fast. She didn't want the night to end. Later, they returned to the garden. Tom looked at the sky. The human ship would arrive soon. A soft wind blew through the leaves. Riva sat down, her hands resting on her knees. "I never thought I would care for a human," she said quietly, "but now I do." Tom turned to her. He didn't understand all her words, but he felt the meaning. He knelt down in front of her, opened his small book, and pulled out a folded piece of cloth. Inside was the music ball she had used in the forest. He had kept it safe. He gave it back to her. She smiled, touched, but Tom reached for her hand and placed another object there, a round badge. It had a symbol on it, the mark of his people, a small gift from Earth. "Home," he said, pointing to a dot. Riva held it tightly. She looked at him. "One day, I'll visit your world," she said. Tom smiled. He took her hand and pressed it gently. Then he stood up and looked once more at the stars. A soft sound came from above. A ship entered the sky, flying low and slow. Its lights blinked gently. It was the human ship, ready to take him home. Riva walked with him to the landing zone. The Zari officers stood in a line, giving a final bow. The ship door opened, and a human crew member stepped out. He looked at Tom, then at the others. "Ready?" he asked. Tom nodded once. He turned back to Riva. She didn't hide her tears. They stood close, face to face. "I'll never forget you," she said. Tom reached into his pocket, took out his small picture, and added something new behind it, a small drawing of her face. Then he smiled and walked onto the ship. The door closed slowly. Riva stood still, watching the lights rise into the sky. The ship grew smaller and smaller until it became a dot, then disappeared among the stars. She didn't move for a long time. The wind touched her face. Her hand still held the badge Tom had given her. Behind her, the garden tree dropped one of its flowers. It landed softly on the bench where they had once sat. Even though he was gone, Riva felt something strong inside her, not just sadness, but also hope. Tom had changed the way she saw humans. He had changed her heart, and now she carried a new story to share, a story of a human who was not cruel, not wild, but brave, kind, and full of heart. The world would remember him, and so would she. Weeks had passed since Tom left Planet Zari. Riva still visited the same garden every morning. The small tree with white flowers had grown taller. She often sat on the same bench and held the round badge Tom gave her. It was now tied around her wrist with a silver thread. She wore it every day. The Zari people still spoke about the brave human. Children drew pictures, and stories were shared in schools. But for Riva, it was more than a tale. It was a memory, a piece of her life that had changed everything. One evening, while walking through the learning center, Riva heard voices coming from a small room. Inside, two students were watching an old video on a wide screen. It showed the moment Tom stood between her and the forest beasts, holding only a stick. Then the scene changed to him fighting the Zarn guards. The young Zari who watched were amazed. He was so strong, one whispered, and kind, said the other. He didn't even know her, but he protected her. Riva stood quietly at the door. She didn't interrupt. She only smiled and walked away. Her heart felt full. Later that night, she sat with her parents. They were proud of her. Her father placed a new scanner in her hand. It was a gift from the council, stronger, faster, and designed by the best minds. We believe you are ready. Her father said. For what? Riva asked. A new mission. Her mother answered with a gentle smile. Not for danger this time, but for peace. The council wanted Riva to join the Zari Earth program. They were planning peaceful visits to Earth. She would be the first from her world to return the kindness shown by one human. Riva didn't answer. Right away, she stood near the window and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, Tom was on his planet, maybe looking at the sky, too. I'll go, she said softly. The ship was small but strong. It had a soft white shell and blue lights along the sides. Inside, everything was simple. Riva sat near the front window. The stars outside felt like old friends. The journey was long. Days passed. She spent time reading about Earth, learning human words, and studying their ways. She listened to human music and watched their images. But most of all, she thought of Tom. Finally, the ship reached Earth's orbit. Riva's heart beat fast. She saw green land, blue seas, and clouds floating. Like soft cotton, it was beautiful, but also very different from Zari. The ship landed near a quiet town. The area was marked safe by both governments. A group of humans stood waiting. They wore light clothes and had kind faces. One of them stepped forward. Welcome, Riva, she said. Riva bowed gently. Thank you. A small car took her through the town. People looked at her with wonder, but no one was rude. Some waved, some smiled. Children pointed with wide eyes. It was her first day on Earth, but she felt calm. They reached a house with a wide garden. A tall tree stood in front, just like the one in Zari's garden, and there, sitting under the tree, was Tom. He stood up slowly, surprised but smiling. Riva stepped out of the car and walked toward him. You came, Tom said. His voice was soft, but full of joy. You said it was home, Riva answered. Now I wanted to see it. They sat on a wooden bench under the tree. Tom looked stronger now. His arm had fully healed. He showed her new drawings made by children from his town. One of them showed Riva and Tom standing on a hill, holding hands, with stars above. People here remember you too, he said. They talked for hours. Riva told him how the Zari people now believe humans could be good. She shared stories of the new garden, the school drawings, and the music ball that still worked. Tom listened with deep eyes. You changed something, he said. Riva shook her head. We changed it together. Tom stood and walked inside his house. When he came back, he had something wrapped in cloth. He opened it and showed a small stone. It was from the forest where they met. I kept it, he said. It reminds me of that day, when fear turned into trust. Riva touched the stone and smiled. She took off the badge from her wrist and placed it in his hand. Now you keep this, she said. A piece of my world for yours. The next few days were peaceful. Riva met more humans. She spoke in their language and answered their questions. She laughed with children, walked in their parks, and tasted their food. It was different but interesting. Every evening, she and Tom sat under the tree. They talked about stars, dreams, and stories yet to come. On her last day, Tom walked her to the ship. The sky was clear, and the wind was light. Before she stepped inside, she turned to him. I'll come again, she said. Tom nodded. And maybe one day, I'll come to Zari. They smiled. There were no more tears, only peace. The ship rose slowly, cutting through the blue sky. Tom watched until it vanished into the clouds. He held the badge in his hand, close to his heart. Back on Zari, when Riva returned, she brought not just news, but hope. Her journey was now written in history. A new story for her people. A story of one brave human, one alien girl, and a friendship that reached across stars. It was no longer just a story, it was truth.